Roots of Reason. The Sun King, Power, Trauma, and the Architecture of Control. Imagine it is 8 a.m., May 6th, 1701. You are a duke, one of the most powerful men in France. Your family name stretches back centuries. You command land, wealth, and influence. And yet, right now, you are standing in a crowded hallway, sweating. Your heart is racing. You are waiting for a door to open. When it does, you don't enter a battlefield. You enter a bedroom. You are there to watch a man wake up. You watch him wash his face with alcohol. You watch him put on his breeches. If you are lucky, if you have played the game correctly, he might ask you to hold his candle or hand him his shirt. This is the highest honor in the kingdom. This was not satire. This was not excess for its own sake. This was the petit lever. To the world, Louis XIV was the Sun King, a god on earth. But to a psychologist, Louis XIV was something else entirely. He was one of history's greatest architects of behavioral conditioning. He did not rule through fear alone. He ruled by turning his life into a performance and his court into a captive audience. Today on Roots of Reason, we go beneath the gold leaf and the powdered wigs. We ask a deeper question. How does a child's trauma create a man who needs the entire world to revolve around his bedside? Every root of reason begins in childhood. To understand why Louis XIV needed absolute control, we must return to Paris in the late 1640s, during a period known as the Fronde. France was in chaos. The nobility rebelled, the common people followed, authority fractured, Paris turned volatile, crowds gathered without permission. Anger moved faster than reason. Louis was 10 years old. He was small for his age, thin, already burdened by a crown that offered prestige but no protection. One night, the unrest reached the royal palace. Inside the Palais Royal, the air was tense. His mother, Anne of Austria, paced the halls. She had been trained to maintain composure, but even queens have limits. Louis lay in bed beneath heavy covers, eyes open, listening. The sounds outside were wrong. This was not ceremony, not celebration. This was raw noise, directionless, the sound of control dissolving. Someone shouted his name, not with reverence. The doors burst open. Servants rushed in. Voices overlapped. Someone whispered urgently. Someone else swore. "Stay still," a voice said. Louis did. He had already learned that stillness could make you smaller, that if you didn't move, you might not be noticed. The shouting grew closer. Boots struck the floor. Too many. Not the soft steps of court life. The sound of authority breaking down into chaos. The door to his chamber was struck. Once, twice, it gave way. Men poured into the room. They smelled of sweat and smoke, of unwashed bodies and anger that had fermented. They did not bow. They did not ask permission. Someone laughed. The curtains were torn open. Light flooded the bed. Louis froze. He understood with terrifying clarity that the bed was not protection. It was a marker. It said, "Here he is." Faces loomed over him. Strangers. Dirty hands gripping fabric. Eyes scanning him, not with hatred but appraisal. They were checking to see if the little king was still there. His breath caught. He forced it shallow. Quiet. He remembered being told once that animals survive by playing dead. The thought did not feel childish. It felt necessary. He did not move. The men spoke above him, not to him. He was not addressed. He was an object in the room, something to be verified. For a moment that stretched endlessly, he thought they would pull him from the bed. They didn't. Someone said something dismissive. Someone else spat on the floor. Their attention shifted and flowed onward, chasing some other grievance. The curtains fell back into place. The room dimmed. Only then did Louis realize he was shaking. No one commented on it. No one asked how he felt. The adults moved quickly, efficiently. They talked about escape routes and logistics. Louis stared at the canopy above him. It looked different now. Not protective, fragile. Psychologists call this lack of agency trauma, a moment when a person is fully aware, fully conscious, and completely powerless, the kind of experience that bypasses language and embeds itself deep in the nervous system. Louis did not have those words. He had sensation, the smell, the sound, the knowledge that his body, his bed, his most private space could be invaded at any moment. That night taught him a lesson no tutor ever could. Being king did not make you safe. It made you visible. He would spend the rest of his life making sure no one ever opened his curtains again without permission. Years later, Louis acted on that lesson. He did not merely build a palace at Versailles. He built a psychological system. Before Louis, French nobles lived on their own lands. They had private armies, independent power. They were dangerous. Louis understood that distance gave them autonomy, so he removed it. Versailles was not designed for comfort, it was designed for proximity. He forced the nobility to live under his roof, dependent on his favor, surrounded by mirrors and corridors and eyes. He turned the court into a stage, and he placed himself at the center. He introduced a system called etiquette. It sounded like manners. It was not. It was a weapon. The rules were intentionally complex. Who could enter which room? Who could sit? Who had to stand? Who could speak first? Who could hold the candle? Who could touch the shirt? These details consumed lives. By forcing nobles to obsess over tiny distinctions, Louis kept them in a state of cognitive overload. If they were worrying about their stool, they were not organizing rebellion. Warriors became courtiers. Power became performance. Louis chose the sun as his symbol for a reason. The sun is the center of the universe. It gives life. It defines time. It commands gravity. But get too close and it burns you. In modern psychological terms, Louis exhibited grandiosity, a core trait of narcissistic personality structures. But here is the twist. His narcissism was functional. He used it to stabilize a fractured nation. He convinced France that he was not just its ruler, but its identity. I am the state, he declared. And for decades, the country believed him. But there is a cost to absolute dominance. What happens to a man when no one ever says no? When doctors analyze his bowel movements as if they are sacred texts? When relationships exist only to reflect his image? The man disappears. There was no Louis, only the king. As he aged, the sun began to set. Louis suffered from gout, from diabetes, from a slow, horrific gangrene infection in his leg. But the rituals did not stop. Even as he was dying, he insisted on public ceremony. He would not allow the nobles to see weakness. The performance had to continue. On September 1st, 1715, Louis XIV died. He had ruled for 72 years, the longest reign in European history. And almost immediately, something changed. Versailles felt different. The magic evaporated. The nobles, who had spent decades fighting over who could hold his shirt, suddenly realized they were standing in a cold, damp palace in the middle of a swamp. They left. The system collapsed faster than anyone expected, but the logic survived. Louis understood something that still governs power today. Control does not require force if people learn to regulate themselves. You do not need guards everywhere if everyone is watching their own posture. You do not need violence if access feels like oxygen. Visibility becomes discipline. At Versailles, being seen meant relevance. Being unseen meant death. Over time, people corrected themselves before the king even arrived. They internalized the gaze. That was Louis's real achievement. Modern systems perfected it. Today, no one wakes a king ceremonially, but we still perform. We curate. We position ourselves for attention. Institutions reward visibility. Algorithms reward compliance. The sun is gone. The spotlight remains. Louis paid for this system with himself. By the end of his life, he was untouchable and completely alone. Every interaction had an audience. There was no space left to be human without risking collapse. The sun could not step out of the sky, so he stayed there until it killed him. The tragedy is not that he ruled too long. It's that the world he built had no room for a man inside it. Louis XIV shows us that power is not just about armies, it is about the gaze. By controlling where people looked, he controlled what they thought. He took the terror of a 10-year-old boy in a bed and turned it into the most sophisticated system of social control the world had ever seen. We all carry a trace of the Sun King, the desire to be noticed, to matter, to sit at the center of our own small universe. Louis shows us the cost. When you become a symbol, you stop being human. This has been Roots of Reason.